Hi guys, it's time to start. Can someone close the door? Thank you. So let's start. So this is the best session in Montreal. So this week, for the first time, we will have 2 sessions. So one today, and there will be one very late on Thursday, unfortunately. So we'll start with our status of the not well. Please read it if you are not aware about it. But it says that whatever you are saying, you are contributing to the IETF. It's part of your participation. Blue sheets are circulating, I think.
Yeah, one on each side. So please sign up.
So, Luc-André, are you still okay to take the minutes? Thank you. Okay, so let's start with your status. So since last time, we have 3 new RFCs. We have 2 documents that are still in RFC editor queue, but still waiting due to misref. So DCI VPN overlay is still waiting for the tunnel on caps from IDR, I think. And the EVPN prefix advertisement is waiting for the inter-subnet forwarding on our side, which is, I think, under Martin review. Inter-subnet forwarding.
Yes, and inter-subnet forwarding is recursively waiting on Martin.
And I'm waiting on BOM procedures and one of your drafts, Ali. IGMLP or
IGMP, MLD?
IGMP, yeah. Because of downward ref issue. But since I've waited too long, I've decided to process one of them.
So we have now 4 documents that are under Martin review or under IESG review. We have a lot of documents that are under Shepherd review. Fortunately, we have some help from other people. So BOM procedure updates, I think the write-up is ongoing, so it should happen soon. NSH BGP control plane, I don't know if we have Adrian in the room or not. There is still a small update to do in the document before moving forward. Do you want to do something?
I was just going to mention the VPLS multi-homing draft has just been updated, so I'll move that forward now.
We have a problem with the best service chaining draft. So as part of the Shepherd review, we've seen that the document is really, really far from being ready to be published because it is targeted to be standard track, and clearly there is no possibility to make it standard as it is done today. And there is a huge work to make it, I would not say readable, but to be ready to be standard track. And we have polled the working group to know if there is still some support to help proceeding with this document. There is no objection, but we don't have any people who really want to help progressing. And the authors also are not responding anymore on this one. So our proposal is to park this document, but we would like also to know maybe from Martin if there is an issue, probably with another working group like SFC, or we don't know. Yeah.
That's the one who talks about XMPP and so on?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a complex one.
So Martin speaking. We already had problems with this document when I was chair of BESS, and so that dates. So you can't progress a document if it's not ready and if no one has the resources to to update it and put it in shape. So you're doing the right thing in asking the question, and I'm not aware of any dependency.
We are not.
So you don't have to do anything. Maybe somebody will come in 3 months and we'll have the resources, but in the meantime, you can leave it here and let it die.
Okay, so we have still a bunch of documents that are ready for working group last call as per our view. Please just review this, and if it's not accurate and if you still need to do some updates on this document, just let us know so we can remove this document from our queue. Ali?
So I've got a question with respect to the service chaining draft.
Yeah.
That you're looking for the authors to be proactive and taking care of the comments for that, because none of the authors are none of the main authors are here. So I was going to relay that.
Yeah, but we have contacted the authors many times by email without any answer.
Oh, I see, directly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at a certain point, Stuart wanted to update the document, but we don't have any answer anymore.
During my lifetime as chair of BESS, I think we managed to find 3 different editors, which all 3 of them never managed to edit the document. So it's a cursed document.
And we have 2 new working group documents. So one for the EVPN LSP ping, and we have the EVPN Geneve. Also, we are just waiting the offer to publish the document using the -IETF, because it's still as an individual draft today, even if it has been adopted. We have also a long list of documents that are ready for working group adoption. Again, if these documents are not really ready, we need to be aware about this to process the documents in the right order. Milestones. So we are clearly late on some topics. So the first one is Yang. We had a target to submit at least the layer 3, layer 2, and EVPN in January. We are now in July, and it's not done yet. So I think we will have an update on Yang on our Thursday session. BGP and SH control plane, we are targeted to send it to IESG by March. We are really not too far to do it, but as I have told, there is still an update to do by Adrian. And VPLS multi-homing, I think we should be okay now. Yeah. One other topic that we wanted to mention during this status is that there is currently multiple documents, whatever it's in BESS or IDRs, that are dealing with IPSec encapsulation. There is a draft from Linda. There is also the draft from Ali talking about secure EVPN, and we have also some draft in IDR. So we had a kind of side meeting with the IDR chairs in June to try to see how we can organize this work for the IPSec BGP signaling. What has been agreed is that if we need to define some TLV for the tunnel encapsulation, this will be done in IDR, but people from BESS can contribute. But then, part of that, we need also to try to work on the security association mechanism and how to do the signaling through BGP. We need to try to harmonize as much as we can between the different use cases, how we do this, this signaling. One of the fact is that we don't really have all the IPSec expertise within IDR and even in BESS. So what has been decided is that there will be a discussion in IDR tomorrow to discuss this topic, including some IPSec experts that will help us to determine what is the best way to do this. So if you are interested in this topic, please be there tomorrow in IDR to help and provide your comments. So here is our agenda for today. So we will start the presentation. Gaurav, I think you are the first one. Ali, do we want to say something? No, Gaurav will be the first one. Yeah. No, you are not the first one. Gaurav is the first one.
On the agenda, it was the first.
Yeah. But he had some constraints, so.
Hi everyone, my name is Gaurav Davra, LinkedIn. I'll be presenting on behalf of the authors, and sorry Ali for bumping you down. I'll be presenting the SRv6 BGP overlay services. We have presented this draft few times before. We presented IETF 98 for L3 VPN. Then we presented again eVPN services in IETF 101 in IDR. Then we changed the draft and presented in BESS in IETF 104. And this document has matured significantly. There has not been any significant changes made to the document in multiple years. And it has even multiple customer deployments in the field around the globe. So in this update, we are doing some minor modification, addressing all the comments which are coming in from the working group members. And also special thanks to Jorge and Ali for for BGP packing issue, which was there, which we have addressed in this document. So thanks for their contribution. And we have added them as the contributor and authors in this document. So one of the problem which was originated in the last working group was about the BGP packing. In certain conditions, especially when it's a EVPN VPWS, we have a case where we may be able to do suboptimal packing in BGP. So let's say all the attributes in BGP are common across certain set of LRIs, but because of the EVPN VPWS ID might be different, it can actually lead to the suboptimal packing of the BGP updates going out. So what we have created is introduced a flexibility of having the function and arguments in the in the label field of the NLRI, so the attribute will remain the same. And we are advertising that as a sub TLV, a structure sub TLV in the BGP update. Because of the nature that this is an optional sub TLV, it's fully compatible with the current implementation which are out there. So this is how the SID structure sub TLV will look like. So we'll have the SR service data sub TLV set to 1, which represents the structure, TLV length, the usual boilerplate fields. We also have a transposition length, which is basically the part of the SID shifted into the label, the label field, and then the offset for those bits. Just to go over the implementation status, as I was saying earlier, there has been deployments which are publicly announced. So SoftBank, China Telecom has already deployed, and there are multiple other deployments which are not public yet, which will be released by the vendors. There has been 3 Cisco hardware forwarding planes, which have already supported, and 2 Cisco operating systems. Huawei has also supported multiple platforms, and then it's also supported in Linux kernel natively. We also have Barefoot, Tofino, OCP, and Wedge implementation. There is also a document which is out there which gives more status about the deployment status for this particular draft. So any other comments are welcome, and now we are seeking the working group adoption for this document. Thank you.
Okay. Ali?
I had some concerns and comments in the last rev, and the authors work in good faith and diligently to address most of it. So the draft is in pretty good shape, and I think it is ready to be progressed to the working group.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. I have 2 questions, speaking as individual, Stefan Nikowski. Why don't you use the tunnel on caps attribute to tell that you are doing SRv6? Just to be consistent with all the other encapsulation type.
So we are trying to be consistent with the way the SR signaling is being done. That is why we're using the prefix SID attributes.
Yeah, but BGP prefix SID was thought with MPLS in mind, which was consistent with the AFI it is using. But I'm pretty fine that you are using the BGP prefix SID to signal all the necessary attributes that you need. But for me, it would be great to add, in addition, the tunnel caps for consistency reason to tell that it's doing SRv6.
We'll consider that. We'll discuss about it.
And my other point, still speaking as an individual, is about packing, which is a good thing to add. What I don't like is that you have 2 ways to do the same thing. So can you consider doing just a single one? Because here we don't, it's not really clear in the draft. You are not telling that you must do the, I would say, the packing friendly way of encoding or not. It's not really clear which way should be used. In my opinion, it may be better to have a single one. If you want to optimize for packing, just do it, but do it always.
Yeah. Ketan Talaulikar, Cisco. So by definition, the SID structure and the size and how much is the function is flexible. We should, in most cases that we see, we should be able to fit it in the label field, but it may not be possible to do that. So we don't want to take out that option. So
yeah, but don't you think it is adding complexity?
I think it's something that we'll look into for sure and work through. But that was I wanted to share the motivation for why it was originally.
I fully agree that the packing concerns that I think Rory has mentioned is worth solving.
Yes.
But yeah, we need to prevent having too much complexity.
So if I may add, and for them to solve the packing, they introduce this flexible structure and all that, and that basically is a superset. So once you have that, then sending it in a opaque way, that introduces very little complexity. So having In other words, having both of them, once you have the way to address the packing, having the second way introduces very little overhead.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. Who has read the document? Who thinks it is ready for working group adoption? Okay, pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Ali.
I was getting very comfortable in my place sitting.
Sorry.
Okay, two, a status update for two short drafts. The first one for the multipath procedure for EVPN all active, weighted multipath, and that is basically if you have a all active multi-homing and not all the links are of the same bandwidth, and either as a result of the failure or the way it was configured right from the beginning, then the question is, how do you do weighted load balancing toward these different links from the for both unicast and multicast traffic? So for this is just giving you a quick solution summary that for the unicast traffic, you advertise the bandwidth attribute along with the Ether AD per ESI to the remote PEs. And once remote PEs get that, they create the path list based on these attributes from different PEs to decide how to do the load balancing. And if, for example, you have, I think there is an example here, that if you have PE1 and CE1 is multi-home to PE1 and PE2, and PE1 advertises the bandwidth attribute to the remote PE that says I got twice the bandwidth than the PE2. So PEX, which is a remote PE, creates a path list that weights the PE1 twice as much as PE2, and thus the load balance sends traffic to PE1 twice more than the PE2. So that's for the unicast traffic. For the multicast traffic, they do these bandwidth attribute exchange among the multi-homing PEs, and then they decide how to do the DF election or weighted DF election. And based on that, they decide between PE1 and PE2, PE1 and PE2 among themselves decide who should forward more traffic to the CE based on that weighted DF election. So this is a quick summary of the solution. We added a very short section 4.4, to optimize the weighted DF election based on weighted HRW. And there is a new draft that talks about how this weighted HRW is done. So this is a quick, this is a very brief section pointing to that draft. In terms of the status of it, it is in good shape and has been stable for quite some time. And it is pending implementation. And I think it is ready for the working group call, last call. So,
any idea of the roadmap of implementation?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Yeah, any idea about the roadmap for implementation? Just to have an idea about the timing.
Oh, the timing of the implementation. I don't know about the the other vendors, but with respect to Cisco, I can get the information and send it on the mailing list.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head.
No, but just because of our implementation policy.
Okay, I see.
Any comment on this one? I think you are also the next speaker.
Yes. Okay. Extended mobility procedure for EVPN IRB. This is a draft that also been around for a while. And this one, I know the status of implementation. It has been implemented. If you look at the baseline 7432, it is assumes one-to-one mapping between the MAC and IP address. So the host has one MAC and one IP address, and that's the fixed mapping. There are a bunch of use cases that has nicely been described in this draft that talks about that might not be the case. You might have many IP to MAC binding, or vice versa, many MAC to IP binding. And in those cases, the host IP moves, host IP can move to a different MAC, or host MAC can move to a different IP binding. And the last case is, well, there is also, when you talk about L3, pure L3 use cases, you're not going to have a MAC address at all. You're just going to have an IP address. So then how do you take care of the IP? In those cases, how do you take care of the mobility? So these are the three use cases that have been described in the draft, and talks about how to do it. And the way they do that is, instead of having a sequence number individually per MAC or per IP, which creates complication, they anchor the sequence number to only the MAC address, and then the IP inherits it. And if MAC moves, then that takes the anchor sequence number with it. And with the routed overlay, which is pure IP case, it just, the sequence number applies to the IP address just as if it applies to the MAC address. So the procedures in the routed overlay is basically the same as the MAC mobility in 7432. Also, the draft describes duplicate address detection. The duplicate address detection is already there for when you have MAC duplicate, and then the draft adds what happens when you have IP, duplicate IP with different MAC bindings, or duplicate IP for the case of the routed overlay. There was the changes relative to the last rev has been minor. When had a comments with respect to some certain race condition that we thought it is worthwhile to capture it in the draft, making sure it is documented. So we added a short section to capture the race condition and the remedy for that. Also, we fixed some terminology and for consistency with the other EVPN documents, and some minor edits. This one is also being implemented by multiple vendors, and we are good to go for the working group last call.
Thank you. Any
Sure.
comment?
Good afternoon, sir. I have a question on previous draft.
Sure. This draft or previous draft?
one, the extended community. I'm very much interested myself in making it transitive. I've also reached out to Pradosh, but he's not really responding. Any luck?
Extended community for which?
The bandwidth community is non-transitive as of today, so it cannot be used on EBGP.
The MAC mobility extended community?
The bandwidth community.
Oh, bandwidth community. Oh, that one. Okay. So when you reach, did you get any response on that?
No, not really.
No? Okay. I'll take an action item on that. Okay. So that action item is on me.
Jeff, I have a follow-up on the link bandwidth just for a second. So Juniper's implementation has been transitive for ages. It squats on exactly the same code points, just with a different transitivity bit. This is a known interop problem. The link bandwidth draft has gone IETF dead for a while. Got dusted off, I think by Keaton about a year ago. We really should just work together and try to actually get this taken care of.
Sure.
The main interesting headache that we have for applications regarding BESS and IDR is that sometimes you may want it to be non-transitive, sometimes you may want it to be transitive, and you have to figure out how to make the two operate together.
So one question, this attribute is frankly defined in a new is a different draft, and it's been around for ages, and somebody, I think, volunteered to move it forward. So, okay, so basically what I'm trying to say, it is nothing to do with this draft, because this draft just references the other one. But we need to solve that one in order to make sure, you know, for the transitive and non-transitive cases it's clear. Okay.
Right, so I guess my suggestion is that rely on the draft itself in terms of encoding. Don't worry about the fact that it's, you know, transitive versus not. Use what is appropriate for your mechanism, but realize there might be interop issues at the moment.
Okay, all right.
Next speaker.
Hi, I'll be presenting this draft update on behalf of all the authors. So this draft was originally published in 2015, and it was presented in the IETF at Prague in 2015, and then again last year in Montreal, IETF. And last month in May, it was accepted as the working group document, and Rev 0 has been published. So I'm not sure why it's still not showing up. So
yeah, but it should.
At least I see it's showing up now. So some of the revision history for this draft that first published in 2015, it has had 8 revisions, and in last 1 year, it did not have any changes. The last major changes were done in Rev 5, which was in July 2017, about 2 years ago, where we had changed some sub-TLVs were rearranged, some fields were rearranged, and the text was modified for this draft. So in general, draft is very stable for more than a year now, and we think it's ready for the W work group last call.
Are you done? Yes.
Yeah, I'm done.
Jorge Rabadan, Nokia. No, just a couple of comments. So in the, I saw in the TLVs, you put the Ethernet tag ID before the Ethernet segment identifier, whereas if you look at the routes in RFC 7432, it's the other way around. So the ESI is actually above the Ethernet tag. Is there any reason for it, or is it just a...
It's just the alignment. No, there's no any particular reason. We are just defined because these are new definition for these sub-TLVs, right? So even though they are based on the what's in the RFC 7432, but these are, I mean, new TLVs really. So we have put it this way, but we can take your comment on that. And
yeah, I mean, if there are no implementations yet, it would be nice to follow the same order.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
In the other thing is, I'm missing, for instance, there's no TLV for the SPIMC AD route. So do you have any plan to add more routes and TLVs to the draft? Or?
So why don't we discuss this offline then?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sami, you are the next one.
Hi, good afternoon. Sami Boutros from VMware. So how can I make it longer? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to be presenting this draft. It's about extending EVPN to support Genève. So, next slide. So the draft was first presented at IETF 99 in 2017 in Prague too. So what the draft is about is that how can we extend the EVPN control plane to support the new cap for Genève. Genève has been the tunnel encapsulation that's adopted now by NVO3 as a standard in cap. So this is why it makes sense to have EVPN control plane support Genève encapsulation. So the draft specify how can we support that in the BGP tunnel encapsulation. As well, the draft define a new Genève option, an option TLV, for the reason described here. So that option TLV is going to be used to carry the indication for the bump traffic, the B bit, as well an indication for the leaf, for root leaf handling. And as well, it will have an optional 24-bit. This is for to encode the ESI equivalent to the ESI label for split horizon business. So this is what those 24-bit will be used for, which is gonna help do the split horizon as I mentioned, and those will be added on the EVPN per ES route or auto discovery EAD route for the per ES as per 7432. Actually, I missed the work group adoption that happened in June. So I guess I'm the one who missed it, not Parag for the OEM draft. So I missed the work group adoption, but I will upload when after IETF as soon as possible, the IETF version of the draft. So questions?
Comment, if that may be possible.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Well, let me ask it as a question. Where were you intended chairs? How does this relate to the last discussion we had about tunnel and caps additions going? Are we going to put them in IDR? Are we going to put them in BESS, or do we just sort of figure out which one and go from there? Okay, tunnel and cap draft is closed.
Last time we discussed about the IPSec encapsulation, not general, but yeah.
I don't, it just...
At the end, at least in my opinion, we could in BESS add new types within the tunnel and caps.
Okay, that was different than my understanding. That's fine, just a minute.
So the problem we had with IPSec is that you already had some RFCs within IDR dealing with IPSec encapsulation that we have to, I would say, replace.
Right.
That's why it's your job.
Okay, so you have a, okay. So one of the things is we're finishing off the current tunnel and caps draft. And we're both taking tunnel and caps additions, we've either got to, we work well together. We just got to do this and not have people having the same type of tunnel and caps next set. So I think we need to harmonize that together. Both places have good things, but they have to be cross-reviewed. We need to not have things coming for the same thing. But that is, I'm assuming we're going to do that because you guys are great. For the Genève and the beer stuff, we need to be careful on the basic functionality, and that is where I'm going to make a direct comment toward your draft.
Okay.
Good stuff. Want to see it in tunnel and caps? No problem. We need to think about the chicken and egg approach with tunnel and caps. with Geneve. If one's an overlay, underlay, how are we going to think through that particular problem? You have Geneve, you have BGP, and then you create another level.
Sorry, I'm missing. What is the other level?
So let me try to address it. I mean, this is a good concern because the tunnel and cap draft is, we're trying to publish it as RFCs in the last stages, been around for ages, and we don't want to add any more to it. And if we want to add it, then we want to make sure that we are in sync. So however, with respect to this draft specifically, and with respect to other EVPN drafts, we don't use tunnel and cap. We just use the extended community, which was defined in RFC 5512. That's all we are using. Every other fields comes from EVPN routes. So we are not using tunnel and cap in here, and although it's a valid concern, but it doesn't cause any issue here.
So, thank you very much, Ali. What the tunnel and caps draft says right now is that you have limited use going forward of the community. So if that's a problem, we need to address with it now before we shove that forward up to the ISG. For this particular draft, my point was different. First, there's the chair stuff. I'm trusting you guys. Just mentioning we got to go deal with where we do this stuff. If you're shoving forth, for example, extended communities, that's against what's in the current version of that's been passed through working group calls, sent to you guys. We need to deal with that with the rest of the EVPNs. I'm trusting the chairs. I'm trusting Ollie. We're going to do that. That's not my point I was making to this author, to be respectful. My point is Geneve underlay overlay can be layered 1, 2, 3 with BGP in concept. I would like to have, and we can take it offline at this
Sure,
point.
yeah, I think I don't understand the underlay overlay part,
So
but
NVO3 has underlay with an overlay, yes, and Geneva is being used as the underlay in. Okay.
okay. I think maybe you can take
Geneve
it offline.
is data plane encapsulation,
Yeah.
and BGP is control plane. So they're,
Yeah, I think terminology and language, yeah. But we can take it offline, sorry. Yeah.
And one other thing, the tunnel NCAP is backward compatible with respect to the extended community. They inherited extended community, which defines a tunnel type from 5512. They put it into the tunnel NCAP, and whatever we have in the EVPN is consistent with the tunnel NCAP that uses the BGP extended community. So we are not, we are not in conflict or anything like that.
Yeah, it's compliant with 5512, that's true.
Yes, and then 5512 is obsoleted and got superseded by tunnel NCAP.
Correct, but it's still compliant with the
exactly
same.
all the procedure. They in the tunnel NCAP draft they defined a procedure that you can only use extended community, and we worked with the author of the tunnel NCAP to make sure that what we have is consistent and doesn't break anything.
So Geneve is just another IANA type for what's already defined. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, thank you.
Next speaker, Patrice.
So hi, I'm Patrice Brisset from Cisco System. Today I just want to give you a quick update on the fast de-escalation recovery mechanism that we've put in place into the draft. So basically, just a quick recap, because it's been a while that we have presented that draft. So today, if you look at the RFC 7432, the way we are doing recovery for any link failure or node failure, we use a peering timer, which is, I think by default, a 3-second timer. And so therefore, your recovery is about 3 seconds. So it takes a bunch of time, and for sure, a lot of customers are not happy about it. So therefore, we scratched our heads and came out with two different options. And one of the options is the handshake. And another one is, we call it the synchronization, using more like an NTP approach. So for the handshake, it's basically two new route types has been introduced. And pretty much you just tell the other guy, hey, I'm going to be I'm recovering, basically giving you kind of a message to your peering Ps, and the peering Ps, when they are ready and they have done their switching for the definition, they're going to give you kind of an acknowledge. That's one of the mechanisms, pretty straightforward. However, we got a couple of complaints that people say, why do we need new route types? So as author, we are looking at really optimizing the way we are doing it just for 2Ps, because it's like usually it's cover maybe 90 to 95% of all the multi-homing use case that we are doing. So soon on the next release, you will see some text there, how we're going to do this. Regarding the other option is really with the DF election synchronization. So pretty much that one is very, very simple. So the guy which is recovering is encoding inside a new BGP extended community just a timestamp and say, hey, at that point of time, I'm going to switch over and recarve my service. So you give that to the peering Ps, and that value that we are passing is like in the future. So all the peering Ps say, oh, okay, cool. So we are in TP clock sync. So therefore, at 5 p.m. 30 seconds, we're going to switch over. And this is how it's the mechanic. So we have both options. I think we are still seeking for more comments, but one thing that you need to be aware is both option has been implemented, both option has been delivered also to customers, so it's being used, and we are getting good result with that. Workgroup adoption also would be very, very nice for this draft. That's it. I'm done.
No comment? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. What did I say? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Thank you.
Next speaker, Jeffrey.
Okay. MVPN source discovery interoperation. This is an ongoing collaboration between the co-authors of existing drafts and Stig McManus on a new aspect of this topic. So MVPN MSDP-SA interoperation drafts is about translating MVPN source active routes into MSDP source active messages. That draft is ready in queue for the working group last call. It has not been called yet. But then Stig and McManus said, wait, could we add another small thing into this as well, which is PFM-SD. And what is that? It's existing RFC, PIM flooding mechanism, and source discovery. Basically, the PIM BSR mechanism is extended to flood general information through a PIM domain. And in this case, that is used for announced source information throughout the PIM domain. For example, the first hop router, once it detects a particular source for a particular group, it will use the PFM to flood the information, and the last hop routers will join that SG tree directly instead of going through the shared tree and switch. So the first hop router will also include its own address as the originator address in the PFM message, and with that, each hop will use that address for RPF checking. If you receive that PFM message from the non-RPF neighbor, then you will discard it. So that SG information is encoded as a TLV in that message. So that's basically what that PFM-SD RFC is about. Now comes to interoperation with MVPN. So in the MVPN case, if you're using MSDP, then once the PE learns that a source and group information from either MSDP or from a PM register, it will advertise MVPN-SA routes. That's the MSDP case. Now, similarly, that PE, once it receives the PFM-SD flooding the SE information, it could also trigger MVPN-SA routes. And on the egress PE, when you receive the MSDP SA, when you receive MVPN-SA routes, you could trigger MSDP-SA announcements. And similar to that, here instead of triggering MSDP, you could trigger PFM-SD messages. And in both cases, you use the existing MVPN-SA RP address extended community that is defined in that draft I mentioned earlier. We can use that to carry the originator address so that when the egress PE receives the MVPN-SA route, you can use that address carried in that extended community as the original address in the triggered PFM-SD message. There are some details about this. For example, if a source site is multi-home to PE1 and PE2, then it will trigger two MVPN-SA routes from those two PEs respectively. As for the same SE mapping, they carry the same extended community because those messages are coming from the same first hop router. But those two MVPN-SA routes will have different RDs. And the third PE receiving those multiple MVPN-SA routes, they will only need to trigger one PFM-SD message because it's actually from the same one. There is one question: should PE1 trigger PFM-SD from the MVPN-SA route from PE2? That's a question that we already have some thoughts, but we haven't really decided yet. Another small thing is that when on the source side, if that's PFM-SD SE mapping times out, then as MVPN-SA route is withdrawn by the originating PE. And on the other side, when you receive that withdrawal, then the PE could optionally change the hold time in the group source hold time TLV in the PFM-SD message to 0. That basically tells the downstream routers, hey, you can, this is timing out, you timed out, you can remove it. So now it's simple enough, straightforward, very similar to MSDP case. There is one small gotcha that we need to get some opinions of the working group and the chairs. That RFC about PFM-SD is experimental. So we could rename the existing drafts about MSDP SA interoperation. We rename it to MVPN source discovery interoperation and cover both, as long as it's not a concern that the PFM-SD RFC is experimental. If that is a concern, then we could say that, okay, let's just do them separately when we finish the existing MSD one as is, and then do a separate one. But other than that, the things are very similar.
AC Lander Cisco. How widely implemented and deployed is the PFM-SD in PIM?
Is stick here? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so it is implemented. I know implementations, but I'm not sure how much deployed it is. Probably not at this point.
Rishabh Parekh, Cisco. So just a question, does this also cover scenarios where the source active discoveries via both MSDP and PFM at different PEs? So since you're using the same extended community to carry the RP address from MSDP source active as well as the originator address, if two PEs discover sources by these two different mechanisms, does this handle that?
We don't think this is a problem. Stig may comment about it further, because even though we're using the same extended community, they will. It's just in one case, in the MSDB case, it does carry the RP address. In other case, it's really the address of the first hop router.
No, my question is if a receiving PE receives two source actives from different ingress PEs, how does it know whether to originate a MSDP source active in the site or PFM-SD message to the site?
Oh, I believe that will be, but depending on the provisioning. If you are configured to do MSDP, then you original MSDP. If you do configured to do PFM-SD, then you do the PFM-SD.
My point was really trying to go towards option 2 to separate these two to make them explicit.
Okay, thanks.
Kesan from Cisco. So I also have opinion that so we have to decouple things. The way we learn source and the way we announce in fabrics, two different things. So source discovery has to happen separately, and the way we announce these not tied together. So it has to be separate. We have to split out PFM SD learning from MVPN advertisement.
I'm having trouble.
I'm just trying to say we need to separate these two things.
Okay. All right. Thank
you. So right now you're learning source through.
Could you speak in the mic?
Yeah, sure. You may learn source through PFM-SD. Tomorrow it could be something else. You could have some EVPN networks, or you can just have in some other mechanism where we can just learn the multicast source. In this side of the fabrics, you can just learn source in different means. That needs to be decoupled from advertising the source announcement on the fabric side.
Stig Vanas again. So what I imagine will happen, and I know some people are interested in doing, is having some PIM domains where they're using rendezvous points and MSDP, and having other PIM domains where they are using PFM-SD. So I could imagine use cases where you basically, the same organization, they might have one site using MSDP, so on the other PFM-SD, and where it's useful to be able to actually have BGP to kind of bridge those. You can say it doesn't matter for one site what technology is used for source discovery in a remote site. So whether it's one draft or not, I'm fine with either. But I think it's useful to actually use the same route to announce regardless of how you learned the source.
Okay. So I understand that there is no implementation yet. No, there are implementation, but no deployment of this PFM-SD, which I was not aware about. I may be in favor of separating the work, just to close what we are doing with MSDP, which is deployed today. And then if there is really a use case and potentially a deployment, you may start working on the other side. But honestly, if there is no deployment, I'm not sure that you should also start working on on the PFM-SD. Just wait for a customer which is interested, maybe.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so this one is about multicast in layer 3 VPN that is signaled by eVPN type 5 routes. This is joint work between me, Wayne, and Jorge. So traditionally, L3 VPN are signaled by BGP, MPLS label VPN address SAFE, and use MPLS tunnels. Initially, it was RFC 2547, and later on became 4364. And correspondingly, multicast is specified in RFC 6513 and 14. Then sometime earlier, with the eVPN, this new draft eVPN prefix advertisement specifies another way to signal layer 3 VPN. Basically use eVPN and SAFE type 5 routes. There are two reasons for the new signaling. One is that it's good for where you have already using eVPN signaling, because you have eVPN BDs, and so just extend that existing SAFE to do that. There's VPN signaling, and also allows the use of VXLAN tunnels. So that way you can provide better ESMP hashing, things like that. And that can be used even if you're not using eVPN bridge domains at all. It's purely a layer 3 VPN. You can still use that to take advantage of the VXLAN tunneling. Even, however, you could do the same thing. That's even with the BGP, with the 2547 signaling by using tunnel encapsulation attributes. But that came later. Now the thing is that if you do have layer 3 VPN signaled with eVPN type 5 routes, the way to do multicast is not specified yet. It's outside the scope of the original document. And so this is what this draft is about. So there are three options that we could do multicast. The first one is to use the optimized inter-subnet multicast, which is defined in drafts IETF BESS IRB multicast. The scenario is that you have data centers interconnected by layer 3 VPN. Here we have a picture with 3 data centers. Each data center will have some PEs in that rectangular box, and the oval shapes in those PEs are basically the bridge domains. Now, with eVPN data center interconnects, typically the bridge domains are not stretched across the data centers. Or you could have them stretched, but when you don't, then you use the layer 3 VPN to interconnect them. In this case, even if you don't have the bridge domain stretched, you could use the optimized inter-subnet multicast with the supplemental bridge domain stretched across the data centers. With that, you can just reuse the existing already defined OISM procedure to do the multicast. And its advantage is that it's all eVPN solution, and also in case of the all source multicast or any source multicast, you don't need any of the RP procedures. It's just pure eVPN based StarG based forwarding. That's option one. The most preferred option when you have this deployment scenario and you have all your sources and receivers inside the are on the bridge domains. The next one is to reuse the RFC 6514 procedures with two minor changes. The first one is that with the RFC 6514 procedures, the way you do the UMH selection, which is basically RPF selection, selecting upstream PE. To do that, you need to make use of the routes that are signaled by EVPN type 5 routes. And also, if you have a PEs at a source or customer source or customer RP sites, then the routes for those customer source, customer RP, they need to carry two extended communities that are used by RFC 6514 procedures. Now with the EVPN type 5 routes, you need to attach those extended communities there to those routes as well. The applicable scenarios are basically three scenarios. One is that you have a pure layer 3 VPN. There's no EVPN bridge domains at all. The next scenario is that you have EVPN bridge domains, and then you also have sources or receivers that are not connected to the EVPN PEs, but connected to the layer 3 VPN PEs. In that case, the ORIGIN cannot extend to those non-EVPN PEs. The third scenario is that you have the layer 3 VPN data center interconnects, and you could use ORIGIN, but you may decide that I don't want to stretch SBDs across the data centers. So in that case, you can use this to interconnect data center gateways. However, while this works, it may not be desired for some operators. The reason is that one of the reasons to use the type 5 signal layer 3 VPN is so that you don't have to run another SAFI. You can just use EVPN SAFI to signal your layer 3 VPN, at least unicast. Now, if you want to use you use the multicast VPN SAFI for the multicast purpose. This kind of defeats the purpose of that one. Ali?
So with respect to this option 2, advertising the EVPN route type 5 unicast and using for the setting up the MVPN tunnels. That is, as you may know, has also been captured in the AVPN MVPN interrupt draft. So some of it is overlapping. So I haven't gone through your draft to see exactly the extent of the overlap, but I'm sure you're aware of it.
So yeah, this is pure layer 3 VPN multicast. I assume you're talking about in the seamless MVPN, EVPN interrupt. There you have in the layer 3 and layer 2 mixed together, right? So
no, that also for some use cases when we're talking about just pure L3, we are specifying the use case for that. So I think we need to have some chat offline.
Sure. Go ahead.
Jorge Raban, Nokia. Yeah, no, I just wanted to comment on what Ali said. I think this is a very nice draft because it basically clarifies all the different solutions that we have in multicast for EVPN, right? But really the option 1 and 2 are specified somewhere else, whereas the only new thing is the option 3, right? That you are going to talk about now.
Yep.
Thanks.
Right. So we mentioned that this option 2 may not be desired for some operators because they don't want to run another SAFI. And so the option 3 is that we adapt the RFC 6514 procedures, but instead of using the MCAS VPN SAFI, we use EVPN SAFI. Here I listed the the route types for MVPN in 6514, there are 7 route types defined for different purposes. And interestingly enough, all those 7 route types, there is only one missing on the EVMP side. Yeah, it's the source active routes. So if you have an operator who really wanted to use layer 3 VPN signaled by EVPN type 5, and they really don't want to introduce another SAT5, and just want to keep using the EVPN SAT5 for the signaling, then we can kind of reinventing the wheel, basically just re-signal all the procedures that is already defined in RF 6514, just signal it using EVPN SAT5. In the meantime, we do have some enhancements that could be done as part of while we're reinventing the wheel. Basically, the same SMAT routes, the multicast routes that could now once we do it using SMAT routes, then we can introduce optional leaf tracking that is not defined in the 6514, but it was mentioned in another draft. And also, currently SMAT routes are not targeted; they are just flooded to all the PEs in a particular bridge domain. When we use it for the layer 3 VPN multicast, then they could become targeted for optimization. Again, this is something that we could do if you have some operators who really want to go this way. But as of now, it's sort of the third option that is just on the table that we can talk about. So we're just seeking comments. We will add more details about specification. So the draft has an introduction section that talks about those scenarios and options, and then for specification, we need to have some normative text about details, and we will add those. And after a couple more round revisions or discussions, at that time we'll seek adoption.
Thank you. No, he has a question for you.
It's Kesan from Cisco. So this draft talks about EVPN everywhere.
Could you speak in the mic?
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to compare similarity between seamless interrupt that we are presenting and then one that you are presenting. So the one difference is with the seamless interrupt, we are just using MEPN signal everywhere. The one you are presenting, we are just trying to use EVPN everywhere, including MEPN network. Is that correct way of interpreting your work?
So in the seamless interrupt draft, you are using the MEPN procedure to do multicast in the bridge domains.
Yes.
And here we are talking about multicast at the layer 3 VPN, not in the bridge domains.
Yeah, that's correct. So EVPN signaling we are just using everywhere. So basically we are just using EVPN signaling procedure everywhere. And okay, so we can just take it offline. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so now it's time for a more open discussion. So we had a comment on the mailing list pointing that the RFC 5549, which is dealing with IPv4 NLRIs carried over with an IPv6 next up. So for example, VPN v4 carried with an IPv6 next up, does not follow really the same encoding flavor that we are using for VPN v4 carried over IPv4 next up. So the opinion that has been raised is that the guy was expecting the next stop encoding to be exactly the same. So using the a kind of route distinguisher, which is 0 in the next stop field, followed by the IPv6 address. But this RFC, the 5549, is just using a regular IPv6 address as the next stop. So this triggered a kind of interesting discussion on the list. I have tried to wrap up the different points that have been raised, and then it will be time for an open discussion if we need to do something or not on this topic. The first thing is that the RFC 5549 is really clear about how we should encode the next stop. So there is no route distinguisher, so we are just the IPv6 address that should be encoded. Of course, this creates a kind of inconsistency compared to what we have done for VPN v4 with IPv4 next stop and VPN v6 with IPv6 next stop. It is clear that the route distinguisher is not something that is really relevant for a next stop because it just creates a uniqueness for the NLRI, but for a next stop it does not really make sense. I personally don't have the history about why we added this 0 padding for VPN v4 using IPv4 next stop. And we have this matching of the NLRI format with the next stop format. Maybe some people in the audience have the history of why it has been done in such way. The other point is that we also have some NLRIs that may carry multiple IPv6 next stop. So one which is using a global address and the other one which is a link local address. And there was a question about which one we should use and is it causing some implementation or interoperability issues. And the last point raised is that in terms of implementation, how do the implementation are dealing with next stop today? So are they checking the next stop length to know if it's an IPv4 next stop or IPv4 plus RD next stop or IPv6 next stop and so on? So plenty of questions. So I have tried to do a kind of inventory of some of the RFCs that we have in BESS to know exactly how we are doing the encoding, and is this specification telling that we should do a kind of next stop length check? So I will let you read it offline if you have some comments about it. But what we see is that the only inconsistency that we have today is really with this VPN style encoding of next stop. So RFC 43, 64 and 46, 59 against this 5549, which is using just the IPv6 and without a route distinguisher. Otherwise, we don't really have any inconsistency in terms of encoding. So Robert has proposed on the IDR list to do a kind of implementation survey on how the next stop parsing is handled today by the implementation. So I was speaking about the are we sure that implementation today are checking the next stop length field to ensure and to at least infer what kind of next stop it is dealing with? If yes, is it done for all the VFISAFIs, so it's kind of generic code, or is it just done for a few of the VFISAFIs that we have defined? And how does the implementation today deal with the case where we have two IPv6 next stop encoded? So this is globally what the discussion is about. So Yeah, it's an open mic, so I don't know if someone has something to say about this subject. So the first thing is, are we aware about some implementation issues or not? Jeff, something?
It was a pain in the ass back in the day.
So do we have some implementation today of the 5549?
Jeff I don't actually know on a specific basis. I just know that this detail pops up pretty much anytime somebody makes a new implementation and ends up being some form of interop problem. It's one of the common details people are just going to get wrong. It's inconsistent. The justification back in 2858 for the same family obviously isn't getting followed. And I think it's just sort of a long-term fallout from, we did multi-protocol BGP, we had to figure out what the rules looked like at the time, and Nextop was one of the things that wasn't quite gotten right. There was another lingering thing in the very original version of the spec for a subnetwork point of attachment thing, which ISIS people recognize or RSI people recognize, but never really got used. And when they revved the spec, they got rid of that piece. So I think for actual spec stuff, John Scudder would be a better person to supply history. I just know that this is probably the #1 item that causes interop issues with new implementations.
Okay, because the question for the group is really, do we have to fix something in this specification or not to make the world better in terms of implementation?
So your real question is, what do we do about this going forward?
About what? Sorry, I missed your point.
How do we progress knowing that this is an issue? You can't change the behaviors of the existing documents. You'll break those things for no good reason. What I suggest is, after the survey is complete and we have some confirmation that people's implementations really are doing what's in the spec, because that sometimes is not the case, that we figure out what behavior we would like to carry forward and do the necessary update to what was 2858. I can't remember what the current RFC number is, and carry that forward in all further specs. So, as I understand, in your opinion, this survey which is proposed by Robert is something which is useful to do. Okay. So is it something that you are carrying in IDEA?
So upon receiving your information and Robert's request, I have already sent out to IDR the easy one, the mail list.
Yeah.
Now, in another hat in my life, I do surveys, fancy surveys for fun. And grins. So this information is important because I believe, Jeff, that they're breaking. If for some reason you really want to take this out and the ops people want to take this out and do this, I can, of course, use my other hat and survey cool stuff on SurveyMonkey to create a one-page survey on this. If it's useful, I can do it. That was what I said on IDR. So we've done IDR list. I can give you better because we really do need this to know if we can do things that maybe we should do in the future that might help our tunneling, like layered next tops or nested tunnels, which is some of the questions I was trying to ask the Geneva folks is, are we going to get into nested tunnels? What sort of things do you have there? Good stuff. Gotta know. So +1 on the survey, +1 on IDR doing, and if you want me to do something better, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think it will be the first step, and then we will see if there is something to do. Okay. Jeff?
So review would be, just answer, would be highly useful, and I recall there are some issues on FRR code. I don't recall exactly what, but there was some ambiguity in the way they were treating Nextop, so it would be really good to review who's doing what and fix it for once.
Okay, so if there is no comment, I think we are done for today. So see you on Thursday.
We have blue sheets anyway. If you have the blue sheets, you should bring them to front desk.
John? 1 minute. Are you going to do it?
Yeah.